All right, so I'm looking at your proposal on Article 21. How much is increasing the minimum by 1%? How much does that cost the district?
In the top. I need to work on that.
We'll have to work on that. Hold on.
If you have other questions, keep going.
Yeah, if you have other questions, keep going.
Yeah, and the top out, right? So the min and the max you mentioned.
Okay.
Why was the take-home vehicle struck through on the top with the sergeant?
Because it used
that
to,
goes to the insurance on the car issue, because we didn't get an answer on that.
well, the take-home vehicle language was there. It's historic because only sergeants who had a take-home vehicle got that $4,000. That's no longer the case because everybody has a take-home vehicle. It's superfluous at this point.
Does that relate to the insurance
It has
issue with the cars?
nothing to do with the insurance with the cars. Absolutely nothing to do with it. That's, you can go back when they put the sergeants in, that special duty assignment, they added that, so you got that $4,000 if you had a take-home vehicle.
Where are we on the insurance with the cars
Wait,
issue?
Hold on a second. I'm sorry. The sergeants have always gotten that $4,000 for the actual assignment. The take-home vehicle was negotiated later on top of it. So you're misinformed by saying that this $4,000 was for the.
Well, if you want to leave that take-home vehicle language there, it's not a deal breaker.
I just don't wanna-
It was my understanding, as it has been explained to me, that the reason that was there was because the sergeants who had a take-home vehicle got that money. I don't want there to be any confusion for someone to see that it says take-home vehicle, that there's now a $4,000 supplement that goes along with that. That's why,
The supplement was for the sergeant's position.
okay.
Okay, the take-home vehicles was negotiated later on. But that $4,000 for that sergeant's position has been there way before that take-home vehicle was added.
Okay, so then what's your objection to taking that out? I think it just causes confusion with your membership.
The objection to taking it out is being that the insurance that you've created, the district has forced on us, is supposedly being done because there is nothing in the contract that says anything about taking home vehicles, but there is something in the contract, so it's considered a violation of the contract.
That's like this weird circular argument that I can't even follow. The policy deals with the take-home vehicles and the insurance that's required by people who have take-home vehicles. That was instituted in March of 2019 by the school board. That is what controls if there's nothing in your contract that says differently. There's nothing in here that says differently. This just had a reference at one point.
Here's what he means. He means that we had mentioned or heard from your side in previous sessions that there's nothing in the contract that talks about take-home vehicles.
Right, with regard to insurance.
And here it is. That I think is what you're saying.
That's correct.
What the statement, there's nothing in your contract that deals with take-home vehicles, it's in regard to the insurance. Therefore, it's a management right as to whether the insurance is required or not. There's a board policy that was duly enacted in March of 19. This union was advised of it in March of 18 that the policy was coming forward. There was every opportunity for public comment because it goes before the board at least 3 times. So that anybody who had an objection to it could have made an objection to it. It is the law of the land in the school district right now that you have to have that insurance. It's also my understanding that the only reason anybody may have trouble getting the rider is that their own personal vehicle insurance is insufficient. So you can't get the insurance coverage that's required under the policy from your insurance company as a non-owner rider if your own policy on your car is below that threshold. So you have to bring your own car policy up to that level in order to get that non-owner. It's not that you can't get it, it's that your own policy limits are too low.
Well, that and depending on the company you have.
Well, Mr. McCutcheon, sorry, Assistant Chief McCutcheon.
You know, I've been able to secure that insurance, and I went through the same process that Ms. Perret just indicated.
Yeah, but the argument we made is depending on the company you have, depending on the private company you're using. Progressive does not offer it. I've called, and there's other members have called, and they've received the same responses.
That's
they do
interesting
not
because
cover
I thought
emergency
one of the
vehicles.
deputy chiefs has Progressive. I know that they said State Farm. I thought it was State Farm, Progressive, and Geico.
Geico does. I don't know
And
about
I have State Farm, and I can tell you that
Yeah.
they do.
Well, Progressive does not offer that insurance.
So it's also an officer making $45,000 a year that's got PIP on his car, and now he's got to raise his insurance to full coverage in order to get coverage for a car.
Full coverage, 100, 300.
Yeah, 100, 300 on top of that, on a $2,000 car. That's great. That's another thing being taken.
Next question is, what does the 3% cost the district? The 3% across the board that's being offered in this proposal, what's the cost?
It's about $600,000.
The last time we negotiated, we had a question, how many officers left or resigned or got fired within the last year?
I haven't gotten that information back. We wanted to get to the table. I spoke with Mr. Fagan or sent him an email about this, that the only thing we were coming with was the salary. Any language we would bring back at another time, either through MOUs, but today we wanted to talk salary only. All of that information is going to be gathered and we'll get it to you. We just couldn't get it to you by today. We have a lot going on in the district right now.
I know.
And do we get an answer on what's considered on duty and off duty?
With the
I can
vehicles.
have either of the assistant chiefs speak to that. Would either one of you like to speak to that?
Specifically in regard to the vehicles, right, fellas?
Yes. Yeah, so I didn't realize it was an outstanding question on this. So we talked about it last time that I was here, and that, when you leave your campus, you're outside your jurisdiction. There's no expectation that you'll do anything more than call 911 and be a good witness. If you take further action, that's on you, and that's the position we have, I believe. I mean, there's nothing that says you need to take specific action, specific type of action, with regard to outside the
So
jurisdiction.
you're recommending we don't take any action in any kind of thing that we see?
I didn't say that. I just said you should call 911 and be a good witness, and then it's on you whether or not you think.
So do we stand on the other side of the street and
Watch the crime.
watch the crime occur? I mean, we're trying to get some specifics. Exactly, if this is, example, I guess, would be if we are, do we turn our radios off and on? When do we do that? Because that's when we consider on duty, correct?
So what would you do if you were out at Walmart and you saw something happening off duty? What would
Off
you do?
duty?
Yeah,
I'd
out
be
of
acting
uniform.
as a civilian,
Okay, and that's what you'd be doing.
But I'm not in
Of your
uniform.
campus.
but I'm not in uniform.
I understand that.
Okay, so, but I don't have my radio with me also.
I understand that.
So when we leave the campus, do we turn our radios off then?
You're off duty.
Okay, so when we
You're
get
heading
the
home,
call
you're
for
off duty.
10-118, any officer that's out and about with a vehicle, we need you to respond here. When we hear this on our way home, what is the response?
The response, if
Or
you're
we
being,
don't respond?
I didn't say that. I said if one of your coworkers that work for the school police department is calling for assistance, is that the question?
No, well, we are requiring you to respond for assistance. Yes.
How are they requiring you? You just said if the radio's
Yes.
off.
You weren't here last time. I was driving home from
This meeting.
for this meeting from when you were here.
Okay.
I was in my car, 10-118, had my radio on, I heard a call from Lieutenant Berkman at the time of a missing endangered student at Dreyfus High School and requested assistance. So I immediately, I'm a cop, I'm not a coward. I put over the radio that I'm going. Luckily I did. When I got there, was only Officer O'Sullivan and a field training officer there. And we worked on and ultimately found the child after 4 hours. Okay? So that's a good example.
All right, so let's take that example. So when you responded to that call, the request for assistance, then you were back on the clock.
Correct.
Okay. So we're not talking about those times, and I thought that was the last time we spoke. We weren't talking about those times when you're actually working on behalf of the school
Well,
district.
there's two sides of the coin, which our membership is very confused over, and so are we, is the following, is that you go off duty in your vehicle. 10-118, okay? Just not being disrespectful, yes or no, I had my radio on. I keep my radio on. Some officers are like, what do I do? What do I do? They're telling me who are more versed in Florida law than I am, because someone said mutual aid is basically is when, it's not only that when a town asks for example, Jupiter needs cops to work a detail and they put it out, so we work under mutual aid for them. Mutual aid, from what I was told also, and Larry probably would know better than I, could also be that you do not have to wait for mutual aid for permission if you're right. If you see a crime in progress, that you're permitted to act in the capacity of police officer in that jurisdiction. So what our membership is very confused of and very confused and they feel that they're being told not to be a cop, is that if they're in a department vehicle and you're driving home and someone waves you down, they're saying, well, the chief said I pull over, call 911 and be a good witness. So what do? I just stand there and not being a wise guy. And this is what I was told. Get on my phone, call 911, say, I'm witnessing a physical assault here and I don't do anything? Or do I do something? Because I said on the mutual aid, from my understanding, you can act. So that's...
So, all right, so let's just take the interpretation of mutual aid out of the equation. Let's just say that you're covered under that mutual aid. It still doesn't address the time when you're not responding to something.
All right, so
we're pulling into a gas station to fill up gas.
Right.
That's part of our job description.
Not on your way home.
It's not?
You can fill up your car. No, it's not. You can go to a depot and fill up, and then you're at a...
Wouldn't you still be going on your time, on the department time then?
So if you're heading from a campus to a school property to fill up a depot, then you're covered on that.
So what do we have the wax cards for then? What are wax cards?
If you're traveling upstate and you're on TDE and you need gas, and you can pull into any gas station and fill up your vehicle.
That's the only time we're supposed to be doing that?
Yeah, you have gas. You have gas available inside the county.
So you would rather me drive 8 miles out of the way and then 8 miles back the other way, 16 extra miles instead of passing a gas station on the way home? I mean, wasn't that for convenience more than anything else?
Can I ask a question? Is this related to the language that we're talking about in the bargaining agreement, or is this some clarification you need within the departmental operations?
It goes to the request for impact bargaining on the insurance issue. I mean, that's all on that same issue.
This is not, I'm not part of the school police operations and what the codes and all that, but I just want to share the driving issue behind this insurance requirement is for the officer's own personal protection. And, you're going to be, if you're driving that vehicle home, there may be a situation, right? If you react and you're acting as a police officer and you save somebody, you might be fine in that situation. Maybe the district would be allowed to cover you. That Garcia case in Hollywood actually wanted to defend the officer, cover the officer. They were not allowed. It was his personal liability. And that's what we're trying to guard against with this insurance requirement. There are situations where the district could not pick up the tab or cover your liability if it wanted to. And that's why officers are directed, and anyone with a take-home vehicle is being asked to have this insurance coverage for their protection.
But we're going back to, I guess we're trying to compare it to the other units in the thing. Okay, forget take-home vehicles. If somebody in this area superintendent who goes from school to school to school every day, correct?
Correct.
Okay, he stops and gets a cup of coffee. Is he covered?
No.
And does he carry liability insurance?
He's not driving one of our vehicles. If they're driving one of our
they're
vehicles,
driving one of the
if they're
vehicles.
driving one of ours, yes, they do.
And the bus driver who pulls into McDonald's. I know you say they're not supposed to.
Those are our
So what happens when they do?
Bus driver would be different. They're not driving a
But what
personal
happens
vehicle.
when they do, though?
The
Is there language that explains that you're not allowed to, and when you are, you will be held accountable for it?
There is language, I believe, in the policy
Okay.
with take-home vehicles. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm not going to
We're
even
not just
attempt to do
talking
that.
about, I think that's the big misconception, because
But we have trained, just, I hate to interrupt you, but we have guys that are like the AC, I think it's the AC guys, some of our skilled trade workers, they have take-home vehicles only because of where they're supposed to go the next morning,
Sure.
so they have to have it. And these guys make far less than you do.
I have a question. Is it possible for the district to look into a rider, a private rider for the officers, and then find out what it would cost the officers to chip into this, to get this coverage? Because, frankly, what you're asking for is not feasible for the officers, especially when most of the officers are struggling to pay their bills, and their personal insurance coverage is only $25,000 to $50,000 on the average coverage. Now you're asking them that they must have a rider of $100 to $300, which they can't obviously purchase separately. They have to purchase it, and they have to up all their home insurance, their regular vehicle insurance, to purchase this rider. So I've heard from the other side that we care about your officers. We care. Why doesn't the other side look into a rider to see if they can cover any officer that's willing to pay into it at a, it might be something feasible for both sides, and the officers can get that coverage that they need if they wish, and you guys, and this argument will be done with.
That's right. In conjunction with a 3%, I guess it's an offer, counter, I don't know if it's a counter offer that's being put across with some urgency, and that maybe amounts to, after we do the numbers, $100 a paycheck, something like that, or a little bit less. So when he talks about a private rider, this is a cost to us. I've been doing this bargaining with it. Hold on, Mr. Burke, 1 second. For this agency for nearly 16 years, and we had early on Mr. Ludi and Mr. Hayes impasse, and we went through multiple superintendents. We did all of the hearings and all of that.
So
I don't think we've had that. I look forward to it. I look forward to it. So if we go down that road, and I've been hearing about the cost to the district and the cost to the district. Now here is a cost to the officers, and in connection with that and these insurance issues, they're confused. O'Sullivan gives you not a hypothetical, but a real life situation that he had directly after the previous bargaining session. That happened. This membership doesn't know what to do in certain situations, when they're on duty, when they're off duty, and when they're expected to act like police officers. Do you just stand by and be a good witness? I've known police officers for a long time, and I think that they want to help. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Burke.
Yeah, so, trying to think what the original question, there was a suggestion that the district try to purchase a rider. We'd have to research that. I'm not even sure what the cost would be, or we could get that coverage. So I'm not going to be able to respond to that today. There's another option here. If the officer wants to totally avoid the insurance, they can just not take the car home and park the car, and that they can avoid the cost. So they're going to have to, maybe each officer's going to have to wrestle with the benefit and say, well, is it worth my while to buy the insurance, because that way at least most of my commute and my fuel, and I've got a vehicle and it's covered, or is this insurance so costly I just as soon park the car and drive my own car to work each day? That's a decision that a lot of employees face, that the few employees within the district that even have the access to a take-home vehicle.
Ultimately, I'm going
We're offering a 3% raise.
You mentioned to that. Go ahead,
Yeah.
the 3% raise,
And,
yes.
The urgency is not necessarily on the district's part. We're doing this out of fairness to try to, we started out this year, we built a budget, we got to a 3% reserve, and at this point, we're still trying to honor those deals we put on the table. I cannot guarantee that in 2 weeks from now, we'll be able to do that if the situation deteriorates. So that was really the idea, that the urgency was out of fairness. If you feel like you're being pressured into something, then we'll take as much time to bargain this as we need.
Just had for the record, too, on all our new guys, which is about 130, I want to say, close to. So that on $46,000 base pay, what they're getting, starting at, that's a $1,380 raise, which comes out to about $53 a paycheck. So after taxes, you're walking home with maybe, what, 40 a paycheck.
Sounds right?
And that's not even counting the 3% that comes out of there also, and so. And then the insurance. And I just want to make one thing perfectly clear. It's not really about the amount of money that the insurance policy is covering, or what it's gonna cost. It's more about when, where, why, and how. Because is it gonna be chosen on the individual? I mean, that's what people are worried about. Is, okay, well, he's gonna not get charged for the accident, he's gonna, and he will. It's not about the money, because it isn't, for some of us, it's not that big of a deal. Okay, it's when, why, that's why we're looking for specifics. It has nothing really to do with the money.
And we also asked last time if you guys had specific instances and gave us the scenarios, we would go and make
Okay,
sure we
and-
got that
and
in
we
writing and
asked-
communicate it out.
We asked, and we still haven't got it. Am
No,
I
I
on
asked-
duty or off duty
Sir,
when I
with
leave
all
my
due
house?
respect, last time we asked for them to give us in writing, and I was told by Mr. Fagan that he wasn't my secretary. So that's become like a
Well,
joke
you're
between the
coming
two
up
of
with
us.
the
So,
policy.
Let's be fair about that. Let's
You're
be fair
coming up with
about
a
that.
policy, we're not.
no, the policy was, look, let's just be honest. You go back and look at the tapes from March of 18. It was proposed to you to put it in your agreement because, and I said, and you can go look, and I said, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but there is a policy with almost this exact language in it that the board is going to be adopting. So we put you on notice in March of 18 that this was going to become board policy. We were told, no, you weren't interested. It's now policy. A year after that, it became school board policy. So you are bound by that policy. You had notification, you had noticed it was coming. No one from your unit raised an objection. No one came to the board meeting. No one spoke to the board. So that's kind of a non-issue. We can talk about putting something in the contract that's different than what's in board policy. We can certainly negotiate that. But to say that we're just creating this stuff is,
No, nobody
You
said
agree
you're
it's
just
a
creating
mandatory
it.
subject of bargaining. It needs
No,
to
I
be discussed.
don't.
Oh, you don't agree with that?
no, I don't agree with that.
How could that's part of their job? How could
It
that
doesn't
not
have,
be a
it
mandatory
does
subject
not
of
have
bargaining?
to be. It is part of having a take-home vehicle.
And if it's such a liability, the only agency that I can know, I know of right now that carries that is Boca. So outside of that, why are we now all of a sudden such a concern?
We are concerned because our legal department brought it to our attention that under the Garcia case, we can't defend you even if we want to.
And
It is for
in
the
Garcia's case,
officer's
he was also
protection.
off-duty, too.
He was on his way,
Close.
no, sir. He was on his way to the office head of his shift, an hour ahead of his shift, to study for the lieutenant's exam. He was going to work to do work, and the court said the city of Hollywood could not cover him. But the city could not cover him. All we're doing is trying to protect your officers. If you're not interested in doing it, that's fine. We can certainly talk
We
about it
understand
more
that
at
you're-
length. Our question is, are you interested in the 3% today or not? Because if you're not, we're going to go back and we can start researching all this information you've asked us for. We'll start putting together some of these scenarios, if you could be kind enough to send them to me, and get answers to them. We can put that together, and we'll come up as soon as we get all the data that we need. We'll set a next session for bargaining.
What was your question?
Question was, I understand that, the district keeps saying that there's an urgency about this 3%. Obviously, the urgency is coming from the state, but if this money was earmarked already for raises, we're talking about $600,000 on a school budget, annual budget, which is over $2 billion. Our union is 250 members. So if it is an urgency and it does have to be reassessed, obviously it's not going to just affect us. It's going to affect the whole district because we're the smallest union, correct?
Yeah, they are the smallest union.
All right,
Well,
so,
they are the smallest union, but if the
That's not really
other...
the issue.
so there is no exact urgency right now for this union.
No. Because any money that's sitting in a pot waiting may have to be used for something. And if we can avoid other issues that we may have to do with other cuts to the budget somewhere, or, what we did back in 8 was it in 2008 where this building we got furloughed to make up some of that money. There are things that may have to happen. We're trying to be cautious and careful. We want to make sure that the officers get the money. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that they get the money. If you guys don't want to take it today, that's fine. What Mr. Burke is saying, we cannot guarantee that we don't have to pull it off the table later.
Well, we just don't want to just shoot off the hip and just, agree to anything at this moment. My opinion is I don't want to shoot off the hip and agree to anything at this moment because I don't see this urgency so bad that this union of 250 members has to be forced to accept something.
We're not forcing you to accept anything. We're just
That was-
laying out
that's
the
just-
facts as we know them.
I'll leave it up
and
to
so
them.
that your unit is fully informed.
I gotcha. Ultimately, we don't want to leave anyone's money on the table. At the same time, I can see that we're going to have a member meeting on this issue. I have a question about the min and the max. Would you be willing to, or would the district be willing, let's talk about just the min, on that 3%, instead of raising the min 1%, make it 4 across the board? Don't raise the min 1% and make it 4 across the board.
It doesn't calculate that way. Because you're taking 1% of the lowest number and saying, well, that will cover 1% for the highest number. It doesn't work that way.
So the
You take
answer is
the min
no.
and
The
max
min,
then.
that wouldn't really save much money. The min is going to apply to raising the min. The reason we don't just raise it 3% is we're trying to avoid salary compression. Though raising it just 1%, makes our starting salary that much more attractive. It's not a
Yes,
huge
I
impact,
understand.
right? It's not a big deal. Like if we could, I guess we could keep the min where it's at. But what you're saving then is 1% on the next salary of the future officers we hire. If we hire, say, 50 officers, rough math, you save about $500 an officer. That's $25,000. That doesn't go very far. That's not enough to cover.
I'm trying to make it more
takes
attractive for the
200,000.
membership, too.
It takes $200,000 to increase your unit 1%. So
Well, we
it would
did
just
it
be a
last year,
small
though.
fraction of 1%.
We
So there
didn't
might be-
raise it last year. We froze it last year.
Correct.
And we got an extra percent for our raises last year.
No, last
No.
year, you guys, we excluded.
I'm sorry, 0.5% for our newer members. The ones that were just hired. We got 0.5% for those guys that, instead of raising the minimum, we
No,
gave
you
it to
gave
the-
them 1%.
Or
So
1%,
officers with
yes.
less than 1 year got 1%.
correct.
If you look, we kept the min the same.
Yes.
The only reason we were able to do that, and we told you at the time we were able to do that kind of schedule the way this is worded, where the more veteran officers got the 6, was because there were so many new officers. And we told you at the time we would probably never be able to do this again. Now, ASOP this afternoon has proposed something akin to this. They have the same number of groupings in here, but they're only going to be getting the highest level at 12 will get 3.6. That's all they're going to get more than the other person who's, the bulk of them are going to get 3%. The ones that have been here less, and I don't have it in front of me, so we just did it last night. So that's what they're interested in looking at. We've offered them 3% across the board, but they asked, what does it look like when we split it out? So we were able to do that math for them and figure that out so that we were able to alleviate their compression, because they didn't get this that you got last year. So they have a much larger compression issue than you do. But as I'm saying it, their numbers that went up, it's not the 6% that you got. I think it's like 3.4, 3.6.
All right, they want to have a member meeting on this, and
Okay.
that's what we're going to do. So we have a spring break that's coming up, and maybe that will be the time I got to get notices out and where it's going to be, and I'm dealing with hundreds of people, so
If you would like any help in getting that information out, I think we could probably send out something to the officers.
Can we use department email to get
No,
out?
you cannot.
Okay, just verifying, because that's,
But if you want to get the info, the only way you can do that is to have the superintendent approve the email. It would be easier if you sent the information to the chief and let the chief just send it out at his discretion.
okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to follow up,
It's just easier for us to get out on.
Right, there's some rules about how we can use a district email, because we have the other unions as well.
what Mr. Burke had indicated, you had said 200,000, and that the newer people coming in would be cost of 50,000.
I said 25.
25,000. So my response is that $25,000, even though it's a minuscule amount, if it is disseminated, it still gives a little bit more money. I'm sorry, I thought it was 50,000 because I was going to come back. It could equate to a 3.25% raise versus a 3%. Sorry.
I can,
Yeah, it'd be like 1/8 of a percent, but we're
And
not.
the top out also.
That's not part of our offer. We don't usually get into what the value of the future minimum salary and what that might free up or not. If
Did you ever
that's-
find out also about the top out, how many times it's been raised in the last 10 years?
I wasn't asked that question, we talked about,
I
but,
did. I asked
okay,
it.
I didn't get that in my list of questions, but we'll look at that. And what I want to show you too, next time then, if we're going to have another meeting then, is to show you what that looks like when we don't move that top out, of what that does to the officer's salary that reaches that top. because it has a profound impact on an officer's take-home pay. Because while they're going to get the 3% in cash, it's not going to FRS, and it doesn't go to the rate of overtime. So ultimately, at the end of the year, they're taking home less money.
But if nobody's ever getting there, it doesn't make a difference.
And that's the reason why we do it, because
Okay.
we don't want to punish an officer who's been here a long time. And I'm going to show you, because there's some confusion.
I'll bring something also, too, to explain
Okay.
what a step looks like when you're moving up instead of staying here.
No, I understand what it looks like. No, I get that. But people are still moving at a certain rate. Just because they move the top doesn't mean more people are going to get there.
People would rather be at the top than not getting anything.
I
And
get
that's
that.
what's happening when you're
But
down
that's
here.
just an argument. We'd rather make more money. That's not has nothing to do with the top. I just rather be getting more in a raise every year. Has nothing to do with the top. The only thing with the reason why we raise the top is so that they can maximize their FRS and they get more money in their overtime. And I'll bring a real world example and show you what that looks like
I will,
the next
too,
time.
yes.
All right,
Okay.
and with that, we'll keep you posted. I'm going to
Okay,
try
let
to
me
get a
know.
meeting scheduled.
Okay, thank you.
All right? Thanks very much.
Thank you.